Call the meeting to order. Start with a roll call. McKee here, Lanterman here, Friedrich
Here.
Varenkamp
Here.
and Council Member Nichols is in Austria, so not here. But hope he's having fun. And then we will go into the work session topic, which is the initial preliminary budget discussion and review. So, Jay, I'll toss that to you if you're
Yes.
gonna.
Mr. Mayor, council members, so first I just want to say thanks. There's been a lot of work that's gone into this. And so we have the department heads that are here, and then also online we have Keisha Gansky, and here in the audience we have Vicki Holthaus from Abdo. An important note that is going to impact finance operations. This is our last meeting, public meeting with Keisha. She is leaving Abdo, and we will be having a new person support us who has been with us supporting other areas, but she's going to be with us more. Her name's Amanda, and she's worked with Reed on bank reconciliations, and so we're working out how that transition will go. But Keisha has done a lot of great work with us on this, working with department heads, and so want to jump into it.
Okay.
So I published are we coming up? Can you put me on there? So again, not going with all the slides, we're going with what the public can see and what you have in front of you. The summary staff report that I'd given you lets you know that the detailed stuff came out earlier this week because we were trying to fine tune it and get you the latest and greatest. So those things went out, but that's the staff report. The most important parts here that I want to hit in order. First, I wanted to emphasize that our market value, estimated market value for 2026 is $23,606,106. So that's a significant increase, a little over $2 million.
It was one of the, if not the top increases percentage-wise in the in Hennepin County.
In Hennepin County, that's correct. And so it's just indicative of the growth that we're experiencing as that stuff. Yes.
Is this in our packet?
Yes.
It is. Which page? Sorry, I can't see that.
So it's the bottom attachment. It's the
Okay.
last attachment on the bottom.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
this is what we receive from Hennepin County. It's the estimated market value. And so just wanting process-wise, this is a key part of the conversation that helps us understand as growth happens, service delivery demands grow as well. And so we've had growth in our markets, and it breaks it down really nicely to help you understand where and how market values have increased and how that's impacted tax capacity. But that's a key component as we begin our budget process. Next that I wanted to bring up is because we have had some borrowing, so we did a 2025 A bond, our debt service requirements are increasing. And so this is something that we're projecting, want to make sure that you understand that, and so that's why that was included. But our focus is the general levy today, and so I wanted to see which direction you wanted to go. So I can go straight to the budget, which was in there, the projected budget worksheet, or we can focus on the memo, and we can talk by exception on particular things you want to highlight on the memo. You know, this is really for you all to, I've spoken with all of you about the budget, but for the sake of transparency for the public and also for the benefit of the rest of the staff, if there's particular things you want to focus on to make best use of our time, which direction would you like to go? Do you want to go to the memo and go on the, or do you want to go through the budget sheet?
Preferences from council?
I'd say just go right to the budget.
Okay.
Anyone? Good? Good? Sure.
So, one of the advantages of the memo is it spells out where changes occurred at a high level. But I guess what's key here is our revenues are projected to increase. The significant increase here is the projected increase on the levy, on the property tax levy, in order to meet the requirements of the expenses. So a couple things that I would highlight is revenue projections We're anticipating some continued growth, which then impacts permits, impacts, not a lot of significant change. With some of those things that are coming in, it's important to note that if we do have decreased revenues, there's a corresponding decrease in expense. So an example would be, if we don't have as many permits, we don't have as many building inspections. And since we have contracted building inspectors, if we don't have as many building inspections, then we don't have to pay as much in building inspections. Similarly, if development pace changes regarding those permits, some of our engineering reviews or plans reviews that are outsourced, that changes. We're not collecting as much in escrow, and then we don't have as much in expenses. So there is a corresponding expense with some of those revenues. Not all of them, but with some of those. Another example would be with the TZF, the Towards Zero Deaths grant. That's a pass-through. We're projecting like $169,000 of that is pass-through. If it doesn't come in as high, then the expenses that we pay out are not as high. So there's a lot of cost centers that have corresponding outflow of expense that directly correlate to the inflow of revenues. Do you have particular questions on the revenues that you want to ask? And as you're thinking about that, important to note, we go through, to the degree that you want to, with a fine tooth, each of the department budgets scheduled in October and then again in November before we set the final levy with our Truth and Taxation hearing on December 11th.
That actually leads me to one thing I wanted to just double check with council. I think we discussed this before, and we certainly did last year. Are we still on board? I am personally. I thought it worked out well last year with the method that we changed to last year of kind of taking the initial numbers as they are, preliminary, and then doing the fine tooth, sharpening the pencils after the preliminary high watermark, high level is set, and then doing the department by department or groups of departments breakdowns to get to that final number in
So
December.
I wasn't here during the budget
Okay.
discussions last year. But if that's what the consensus is, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
It worked
It worked
really well
really
last
well, I
year.
thought, yeah.
This is what we got, and then it was just
Yeah.
talk with each
It
department.
gives us a lot more time to go into each department, and also just the way that the timing works with the county and the state and getting information is just not very efficient and well-timed.
Painful.
And if we can push out that final decision to later in the year, we're using better numbers, more data, have more time to break it down and find things. So I thought it worked really well. So
If there's a consensus on that, may I recommend then that it might be helpful to pivot from the detailed budget and go to that staff report that provides the significant major changes and highlight those? Is that acceptable?
for me,
Unless there's particular things in the budget
Yeah, let's
worksheet
do
that you'd
that.
like to focus on.
let's do that.
So, So one of the things that gets highlighted here, the very first bullet, the legislature in 2023, August, if you recall, passed several pieces of legislation that became a bunch of unfinanced requirements for cities. And some of them came to bear in 2025, more of them are coming to bear in 2026. And so Minnesota Paid Family Leave is one of those that we're having to figure out how to do. And Nalisha and her team have done a great job finding our solution. You've looked at that, what our plan is. But there's a budgetary impact of that, and there will continue to be. Admittedly, we are not experiencing the same challenges. The mayor and I were talking with school districts, and the school districts were even more frustrated with some of the financed mandates and how it was impacting them. But there are things that we don't have any say over, and that's an example of those. And then another bullet number 2, what that is as we're trying to fine tune standing up our new water treatment facility and with the utility overheads, trying to figure out what our contribution as the city is to that enterprise fund operation. And so with water and sewer, as we've tried to fine tune it and we've looked at it, we believe that a fair assessment right now is a 5% overhead charge and how it hits other departments. So what that looks like is it becomes a transfer from those funds. So we have had a transfer from those funds in the budget for years, but we haven't had the detail that helped us explain why we were doing that transfer. We understood why it was covering some of these. We have some data now that's understanding that better, and we believe that right now a 5%, and we'll continue to refine that as the water treatment facility matures and as staff continue, some new in their roles to understand better what their time distribution is to support those operations. So that's just reflective of what has been happening, and now we're putting some clearer logic or clarification to the algorithm there. And then several of these, rather than me going through every one, since it's 6 pages, and you had it, is there anything in particular on the first page that you'd like to talk about or have questions about?
I kind of like, not that I'm like trying to make our meeting last longer, but I think for transparency for the public, it might be helpful if we go through the items just to understand.
Okay.
Just briefly, like not in
Yeah.
anything in depth, but
So the next bullet is reflective, and it's not just this department, it's across the board. We have had some roles that have been underneath other departments. So for example, the communication specialist fell under the administration. Since we have a budget line item, a business unit related to communications, we've moved that specialist position under the communications department so that that cost center is reflective of the labor that's supporting that cost center. And then across the board, we planned as we looked at our neighboring cities and our like cities, as we connected with them, most have used a 3.5% cost of living adjustment projection for 2026. So that's what we've used in this. Initially, some of our neighbors have used a higher one. So the initial budget had a 5%. And when those numbers came across, and then we got more data from others, we lowered that from 5% down to 3.5%. Operating supplies, shifting overtime budget, health insurance benefits. Right now, the factor that we're using is 15%, and that's we think that's a pretty good number for right now. But to the mayor's point, the details of that don't become available to us until a little bit later this year. And then dues and memberships, that got shifted. It previously fell under central services, but since the bulk of League of Minnesota Cities work is with the council and with the administration, we thought that it was more appropriate for that to fall under administration rather than under central services impacting all the departments. So in some cases, this is just really moving the expenses around so that it better reflects the character of the cost center that it's being attributed to. Any questions about the first page?
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor,
Oh, yeah, sorry.
may I ask a question? I'm sorry. How many people do we have online listening?
So Keisha is on via Zoom.
Okay,
We don't use Zoom for the public anymore, and we
Yep.
don't have a way to know how many people are on.
okay.
at the same time.
You've said that before. Thank you.
And then under building, a lot of these are minor changes. Plan review fees, the revenue went up for plan review fees from what it was previously by 35,000. Ancillary, and did I say that right?
Close enough.
Ancillary fees reduced by 14,000 based on estimates, and professional services to align with historical trends. Again, the reason that went up 150,000 for building inspections is that's what we're anticipating based on what we've seen. If it's not that much, it means that we won't collect the revenue. So if we have that expense, we'll be collecting a revenue that would be an offsetting related departments for that expense. Central services, an increase in benefits, and benefits, software, Benefits Connect. At ADP, so we've added a recruitment module to try and help us more efficiently and effectively work that with HR. So a lot of software increases, up to $15,000. And again, software budget was shifted from the IT department, or to the IT department from central services, because we're trying to put it with the cost center that's appropriate. Water and sewer expenses reclassified, and again, the League of Minnesota City membership dues went from central services to admin. Communications, we talked about the specialist position. Newsletter, this was really effective, and we got a lot of positive feedback last year for us outsourcing it. And everybody that I've heard from, and some of you have even talked about positively how that's impacting the community, that change. Postage for that newsletter is now located there. And then the website changes, we actually just recently approved that, I think 2 council meetings ago. Elections, we have talked about the need to have some increased support for elections and not have elections so upend or disrupt our operations in the clerk's office. So adding some capacity with that increased demand for that short window of time. Engineering, so now that we have clear, we've got Lauren added now as our development superintendent, and with Kevin we've added some professional development expenses in terms of dues and memberships for the organizations that they're a part of for professional development.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
How many people right now are part of elections? Like how many staff?
I'll let Alicia.
So we have the city clerk, and then our deputy clerk is essentially part-time helping with elections, because they're still servicing the front counter as well.
Okay, so 1.5 basically.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then GIS software. Any questions on page 2? We're 30% of the way done. Look at this. So finance, for predictability, face-to-face within the finance department, we have anticipated for the second half of 2026 the potential of having an on-site finance director. And I also, in full transparency, when we were budgeting for this, there were 5 finance director positions out across the metro. And so one of the things that changed, if you remember, when we went out for a finance manager previously, we had the shortest employee that I've ever had in my life, our 9-hour finance manager. That was disruptive. And then we had an internal promotion. Part of the reason I think that our pool, we were having challenges with the pool, was where it landed in the price point compared to the competitive market. And so it has been both in terms of what this position requires, as I understand it now better. We've aligned it better to enhance it with both the professional experience and training to be able to deliver what we need out of this position. And what we've seen with the staff support that we've gotten from Abdul, like this is what we're going to need. I'm discouraged, or I'm not as optimistic about it. But so what's great is we have a plan. Abdul has been helping us tremendously. The only thing that's challenging for us is we are a high-touch organization. What that means is we operate really leanly, but if something's happening today, there's a quick huddle, and everybody figures out how we're going to handle it, and we get the feedback from our very talented multifunctional team, and then we go back with an understanding of how it impacts different areas. It's difficult for us to do that with somebody remotely, to have them without scheduled time pop in a meeting immediately to get that sort of thing. And so that's why that's there.
Quick question. Is the total cost and the wage for a finance director position, it doesn't seem like it's high enough. Is that for a partial year?
That's only for 6 months.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so it graded at a grade 14 when we had the position graded for what we need. Part-time's AP clerk, that has been a great help to us. So we added that. We were behind on some of our claims, and Kathy has been a fantastic addition. We need to continue to do that. And then Abdo is continuing to help us out. I think one of the challenges also under finance, just to call that out, is our escrow is complicated. And in terms of the project and the scope of the project, when we talked about it when I first came on board in February, it's taken longer for us to resolve it. But we've also, I want to celebrate the gains that we've made. And so we've recently had some things close out that we could not have considered closing out 12 months ago. And so we've made tremendous progress. We're probably, Vicki or Keisha could talk into it, but we're probably at about 75%-ish to where we've solved the problem. But when the problem's solved, it still has a high overhead requirement compared to some other cities. And this goes back to being a high-touch organization. So the way that we do development, the way that we take in escrow, it requires a lot of processing, confirming our letters of credit. Not all cities do it the same way that we do, but that requires a lot of staffing. And so that's part of the consideration for finance director, but also as we look forward, we're looking at our fee structure to make sure that we are getting the appropriate fees to cover that's only associated to development.
Quick question on the contract for the outsourced finance director position. Are we receiving additional benefits for the additional fund, or additional amount that we're being charged, or is that just part of the contract?
Say
Like,
that one more time.
Are we receiving additional services for the increase for the finance director position? It says it's going to increase by $13,000 in 2026?
It was part of the contract.
Okay.
So there was an elevator in the contract when we signed the contract. Do you have any other questions about that? But Vicki can speak to it directly.
If that was what was in the contract, then...
It was in the contract,
Okay.
yeah. So fire, we've talked about the deputy director, public safety related to fire, and what that could do to help us with our fire services. And then our contracted fire services with our 3 partners increased by roughly $118,000. And then highways, streets, and roadways, I guess the short way to say this one is material costs are up. And labor costs are, for us, the changes for highways, streets, and roadways. We're moving 3 of the personnel that fell under this to parks, so we'll see that when it gets reflected. That's long-term wise, how we need to be structuring ourselves to be able to maintain it. And it's also calling out the fact that labor is necessary to maintain those parks and trails. And also material costs related to parks are being called out now. And so that's one change in the budget. And then another one is...
Michelle had a question.
Yeah.
One quick question on the fire. Would we ever consider, instead of hiring a position, looking at like a contracted service with an independent person or provider that could help us, give us some direction into what our fire services might look like? Or, I know we talked about this briefly at a different work session, and so I'm just wondering if that would be something we're going to consider, or if this is something that is, and I know we've been talking about this for a very long time, but we haven't actually landed anywhere from my perspective, so I'm just wondering if this should be included, or if it should be an or an and.
I'll let that talk to that.
Yeah, I think we know what functions we're needing to try and provide with that. And I think when it comes time for delivery, we can talk about, is a consultant the best way to kick this off and give us that stronger direction, or are we better off with that staff person? And I think we can validate that whichever direction we decide at the time, but I would say either one of those would be considerations, as long as we're achieving the goals that we need to in that service area.
With this line number, I think it'd be, when we get down to having the public safety conversation, that would be a great time to clarify council's direction or desire related to how we approach fire.
So should we be including it as a position is my question then? Or should it be allotted funds for whatever decision ends up coming forth?
Well, I wouldn't see if we did go the contractual route, I wouldn't see that necessarily lasting more than, usually you're bringing in with certain marching orders and once that accomplished, so I wouldn't see that necessarily going longer than a year. I mean, likely I would see that being a 4 to 6 months type consulting role to get things pointed in the right direction, at which time it would probably rotate into a position, I would think, to continuation once it's oriented and going the direction we want it to, but I guess that's gonna be up to what council direction is once we get on that topic.
In terms of budget detail, one of the challenges that we'd have is that we have to budget it somewhere under fire. And so we can reallocate that as we go into the more detailed conversations within the department. So right now, parking it there doesn't preclude us from reallocating that later to a contract if that's the direction or desire of council.
As long as it doesn't, the overall cost doesn't go up.
Yeah, exactly. So this would just set the ceiling for that business unit for fire, and then the details of it would be discussed
Would hammer out.
in
like
October to
the fire.
hammer that out. So saying that this was an either or now,
Right.
in terms of the budget sheet, it doesn't really, it gets attributed. We either have to put it under personnel or we have to put it under professional services. There isn't a either or category in our accounting codes.
But if we were to approve this, it makes it seem as though we're approving a position, is my point too. So I know we can switch it when we actually finalize it, but I guess that's concerning to me because it's a little bit misleading. Because it seems like, if I were to read this as a resident, it appears as though we're approving a preliminary budget at some point for a position.
So valid, I would also say last year, that's exactly how we did it. So the
Okay.
deputy for fire and then also under police and SIU position, when we went forward with the not to exceed budget, were both included in the line items,
Okay.
and then neither of them were approved when we finalized the budget in December.
Okay.
And then furthermore with highway, streets, and roadways, so additional funding for municipal state aid, that's good for us. Some
And that's a
fee
number
adjustments.
that will still come in, that could be higher, that's a number we'll get by the time the third quarter comes.
Right. So I'd mentioned the positions shifting and changing. One budget position that's currently as a worker, as a maintenance worker, will be requesting to upgrade that to a fleet lead. So we have a pretty large fleet of equipment, and currently it's being managed out of Hyde. And so internally going to recruit from the staff that we have and having one of our staff take on a role in which they're managing the maintenance schedules, the maintenance contracts, changing oil, doing tire realignments, those sorts of things. To the degree that they can conduct maintenance on our equipment, doing it internally, and to the degree that it's outsourced, managing those relationships. So that's a small increase going from a maintenance worker to a fleet lead. And then I've mentioned the increase in supplies. Last one, there's been a decision to close the ice and snow removal department because as far as a business unit, and just include that here because it's another line item. It's unpredictable from year to year. And so it's just been absorbed under highway, streets, and roadways at this point. We're trying to keep it as simple as possible while being as transparent as possible. Any questions on page 3? Okay. IT, so we've got some significant IT shifts. We have servers that need to be upgraded, software that is and hardware equipment that needs to be replaced and or upgraded, and our continued services under IT. anything?
A quick question. Do you think we'll at some point move away from contracted services? Because it seems like in some of the numbers I looked at, it was pretty high, along with our staff person.
I'll let Alicia answer that.
So I don't foresee anytime soon we'll move away because we do have some networking, basically networking projects that our consultant will be working on. So our IT manager should be soon here, and currently they're working on taking some of the workload off of the consultant. So those bills should be reduced in the near future.
Because I only question that because it seems like with part-time, our contracted services was doing the job. And so with a full-time person here now, I would think that that would not be necessary anymore.
We're still gonna have to contract for certain projects. There's not gonna be like one IT person that can do it all, you know, between the networking and the day-to-day. It's a pretty unique field.
I would add on top of that, particularly related to the PD, the police department AT requirements and the BCA stuff that happens there. The uniqueness of that, most cities, even if you have them more robust than just one department, are still contracting services in order to get some of those unique requirements met. And then, so we're gonna have to grow, as we grow, we have some pretty high IT demands for a city our size, and that's because we have leveraged technology in order to avoid the addition of staffing. But when you add technology and you grow more complex, then the overhead to maintain that technology increases.
And I think Alicia touched on it, some of the areas, you know, we do have off-site backups that are being, you know, where things are being maintained and stored, but even from a cybersecurity standpoint and some of the other things, it's such a broad knowledge base that you can't get that with the one person that specializes in, that would be at the level that we would need for security, for storage, for network, for desktop support, for all of those things. I think it would be too hard to try and expect out of one or two people at the level that we would need it at.
Legal fees are going up. Some of those are associated with particular instances, and part of that's just the market. Stuff gets more expensive. Parks, the significant change in parks was the shift of 3 personnel that previously were tracked under streets, now being tracked under parks. And then utilities is changing. The snowmobile trail maintenance account was created in order to call that out. So if you remember Northwest Trails, we have a grant agreement that we serve as the pass-through. It was kind of buried and it wasn't really clear, and so we've actually created a new line number so that that's really clear as it gets called out. It's not a lot of money, but it's important for us to recognize.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
Jay, is that 45,000 a year?
I believe that's correct.
Estimated, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it depends partially on.
How much
what
snow
the-
and everything that happens?
Well, essentially, because they don't, if the registration for snowmobile is down, then the DNR doesn't have necessarily enough funding, but I believe that's based off of previous years. So, but there was kind of a forewarning that they may have to decrease it a bit going forward.
So you said that we're pass-through, we get the money and then we give it to the Northwest Trail.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yep. So this expense and this revenue, if the revenue's not there, then it's because the expense wasn't there.
So quick
Thanks.
question, if I may, Mr. Mayor. With the 3 additional staff, are we bringing in like additional revenue? Or is that just, that's what we just need to maintain?
Parks doesn't really have revenue.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll see some revenue grow here with rentals going forward, and
It's not 3 new staff.
It's not new
members.
staff.
No, it's not
just
previous
a
staff
allocation.
Oh, gotcha.
All the labor was
Okay.
under.
No, I got it.
basically operating.
Sorry, I missed that. Thank you.
paved streets, just material costs are going up. Planning and zoning, software expenses are going up. PD, state aid is increasing a bit. And then there's some other adjustments there. IC Poet, we put that grant in. That would be, there's a request right now for 2 addition of police officers for 2026. 1 full-time officer, ideally it would be a lateral, And then another under the cadet program that we've talked about before, which would be connected to the IC Poet program. I just remind you that there was only 8 IC Poet grants available across the state this year. And with the success that the chief and I have talked about that other cities have had and the challenges that we've had with recruiting, even if we don't get the IC Poet grant, the cadet program is a really important potential opportunity for us to get the right people on the team. So even if we don't get that revenue in the grant, that cadet program is probably something we need to embrace as a way to continue to grow the department the way that we want to grow.
Yeah, and it's also important to note that items like the police state aid and training reimbursements as revenues are dependent on our staffing numbers. They're formulaic with the state on how many people were in seat for a certain number of months during the year. We've had one full-time officer position that's been vacant since a retirement earlier this year we haven't been able to fill. So there is the potential to see those revenues drop if we aren't able to hire full-time to have people in there for that eligibility by officer. So now obviously the expense outweighs the revenues. We don't get back the full cost of an officer, but we could see revenues dip if we aren't able to find candidates to fill those spots.
Some of those other expenses are increases because you're increasing staff, so training budgets go up, uniform budgets go up. Some of those lines are directly related to that. And then with equipment, tasers, life cycle replacements of tasers where we're at. I remind you that we did do, council approved at the last meeting, the changeover to a new alternative from the P320. And so the department is working on that right now. That would not be in the 2026 budget. That would be completed before that. Recreation, it's actually just an adjustment of insurance benefits and costs related to personnel. It's actually a reduction in the recreation department. Paved streets has to do with materials. Any questions on page 5? Okay, and then page 6 is the breakdown by department of everything that we've just discussed.
Any overall questions for Jay or?
So I guess an important clarification, if council doesn't have any other significant questions, right now there's 2 other sessions or 2 other meetings scheduled to discuss the budget. So we put a placeholder in for September 11th as a work session, and then on September 25th we have to set the not to exceed budget levy. And so if there aren't concerns and if there's support for where it's at to set the not to exceed budget at this, then the 11th wouldn't be necessary and we could take that off the calendar. If there are concerns, it would be important for us to know so that we could work on those and address them now or address them on the 11th.
Thoughts from council?
I guess I just have one concern. I feel like a 20% increase from last year to this year is like a pretty large amount. And I feel like we should have further discussion on the 11th about that.
Okay.
I guess I'm just concerned because it's like we can't keep doing like 20% increases every year. That's just like that's not sustainable.
We haven't.
Yeah, so by maintaining a flat
yes.
rate for the last 5 years, that's
Last
part
5
of the
years
challenge
been
that's
flat.
put us in a position that we need to, and then the other thing is, so the consumer price index is bounced between 3% and 8% over the last 5 years. So that's put us across the board, and in some cases we've been behind that. And so the support from council last year in order to catch up with the comp and class study was really helpful. But what's happening with the market, so for example, if benefits are going up by 15%, if you don't increase the budget by at least 15% to account for that, then you have to tell us what you'd like us to stop doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something, Mr. Mayor, it's something I've been saying since I've gotten on the council is 2026 and 2027 are gonna be really hard years for us, and we're seeing it now, until the growth
Yes, catches up.
does its thing. I mean, I've asked, I know how many times to people beyond our staff of, why does it take 2 years for us to see any of the property taxes from the new homes and stuff? I'm kinda getting a better understanding of it, I just don't want to accept it, so that's me.
Another challenge that our community faces is what we've been talking about when Mary Bujold was here, is we currently don't have a very helpful mix in order to reduce some of that
Yeah,
pressure off of our residents. And as she made it clear, we're not within the life cycle of development in which we're gonna get that diversity of tax revenue from commercial and industrial properties yet. So that's why some folks like to compare us to, say, Dayton. If you look at Dayton, so that market value breakdown, if you look at ours, there's not a lot there on commercial and industrial. If you look at Dayton's, their mix looks a lot different. And so they're able to have different conversations about how they meet those service requirements, because those industrial and those commercial, they do not have the same level of customer service expectations and service requirements that all the residents do. So every time we add a resident, we exponentially increase our costs.
I would agree with that. Well, only thing that maybe a little bit I would tweak is that the amount that Dayton, or a city like Dayton, has of industrial is significant compared to us. There are still some things, despite what that study said, that, we have ongoing, like the industrial site in the northeast, the Hope site, which will bring in, I had a conversation with Brian Lothar the other day, if things continue there, some different types of commercial and stuff, so we are starting to see some interest. That's where I have a little bit of an issue with hearing no growth, no interest in the area for those type of uses for the foreseeable future yet. We have a couple that are in progress right now.
Fair, and I, sorry if it came up that way, we've got not just the current international site, but then the one just north of there. Those are gonna be really helpful, but in terms of the timing,
Right.
back to your point, like, we're not gonna see the benefit of that for a couple years.
Yep.
And so while we're on the horizon of that, our expenses today are directly correlated to the fact that we are a growing city, and as we grow, our service demand grows exponentially.
And to not take away from what's happened over the last year and 9 months and stuff, you talk about running lean, I don't even know the word for it before, how off things were and stuff. Just a tremendous amount of things done right and changes, and we're aware of where our money is and what it's going off to and all that stuff. Before, we didn't have a good roadmap on what was going on, so it all has come, it's all been great work by staff and everybody else, and the result is we should have been doing something 3-4 years ago. Some small increments of, I hate to say it, tax increase, property tax increases related to the city stuff, but I'm so far from being wise on being accounting and stuff, I knew it was gonna catch up. And it's
So a
here.
question that I'd have is right now, if we set the not to exceed levy on the 25th, as we have it, and then we have October session in which we go through two
Line by
departments
line,
in
department by
detail.
department.
And then we've had more time to gather more data. And then if you have other questions, that gives us time to work on those. What would you like us to accomplish on the 11th if we were to have a get together on the 11th? What sort of information could we provide you that we don't have today?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, I think, Michelle, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, we're gonna have the opportunity to go line by line when we go into those meetings, and it worked very, very
did.
well last year.
Okay,
We were able to chew on a bunch of stuff, and they all came back, and
at the meeting.
I don't even remember what the numbers changed to and people found, and it was kind of cool watching it. There wasn't a whole lot of us saying, no,
Yeah.
Yeah,
this year might
I
not be
feel
the
like last
same.
year
Well-
we did it on kind of like, well, we'll take your word that this process works, and then it did. Jay recommended it, and we trusted you on it and pulled through, and it worked very well, I thought.
Yeah.
What I liked about it on two fronts is each of the departments had an opportunity to tell the story of their department. You gained a different understanding that we had previously, operational understanding of what it takes for them to deliver the services that you're asking them to deliver. And then they got clarifying guidance from you on what things are important, which helps them as they're making decisions on a day-to-day basis about how they do their operations. And so that collaborative process, I feel was very, very beneficial.
Worked really good, I think.
can I just ask one question? I think that would be super helpful, and I'm excited to be a part of that process, to understand and learn more. I guess, like, my perspective that I'm coming from, when I look at all the different departments and I see the percentage of changes between departments, I feel like and this has been like this for a very long time, some departments have huge increases and some have very little, and I'd like to see there be more balance between how those percentages fall. So we don't see a 50% for one department, and I get that some of it is changing staff to go into a different department, or realigning, like, for example, the elections for 2025 was 2,000, and 2026 it's gonna be almost 50. It's probably because we put a person as partially in that area, so that makes sense. But like, to understand the reasoning behind those things would be super helpful. Like, if I have to pick another one, and I don't mean to pick on police, but that's just a really huge difference, and I don't necessarily understand why there's a $700,000 increase in PD services in 1 year. And I know we were adding a lieutenant, and we've got some of these other positions that we're adding. But like, to help me understand what that is, so if I get a question, I can easily explain, oh, well, it's because we added X, Y, Z, and per person in our city, that's only this much, or,
So that's where the breakdown is that we just read through. All
Yeah.
those increases were just covered on what changed.
yes.
The reason it wouldn't be an equal across the board, because that actually would be kind of arbitrary, because that isn't the way that expenses come in. Sometimes material expenses are more, because you find out the detail that a gravel pit is closing, and now your transportation costs have tripled. And so, I think a really helpful question is do any departments feel like they're being shortchanged? Because that's, I think at the heart of your question is this being delivered equitably?
Yes.
Are any departments feeling like they got shortchanged?
And like, what is unfunded? What are things that are necessary, but we just don't have it in our budget to fund right now? So like, from each department, this is what I would really like, but we don't have the money for this. But at least then, as a council, we could understand that and maybe start looking forward and saying,
So
well,
I
wait,
think
we
that's
can
what we
do
get.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's really important. I think that's what I got last year from the way we did it, where we did the 2 or 3 departments per work session. How many work sessions do we have?
So 2 work
Outside of the-
sessions, 2 departments per work session. One of the things that I'd say, and they may be frustrated with me or not, this is not a dream budget. This is a deliver the services that we've been asked to deliver budget. I've been in other organizations where staff use that as an opportunity in order to get huge gains and huge wins. There's none of that in this budget. It's pretty transparent, and that's when it shows the high water marks on the details here. It covers why the budget numbers have changed the way that they have in terms of the staff report. So as a consequence of that, some services are more expensive to deliver than other services. So this year, elections was 0. We wouldn't have wanted to have any money attributed to elections to make sure that it was an equitable budget this year when we didn't have any real expenses. And we wouldn't use that opportunity in order to do big fun things and expenses, or in elections, at the expense of community development. And so,
And I would say,
Yeah, I was just gonna say also, I mean, it's, some of the changes or disproportionate changes are related to, maintaining the flat rate in the past, different positions weren't approved. That doesn't mean that they aren't needed, and future ones were needed as well. So when you look at the implications of not adding police officers in past years as scheduled, delays them, but it doesn't delay the need for the later ones, So what happens is you kind of get a little bit of a compounding effect where you'll see greater changes in departments that didn't get positions funded in previous ones. And so it goes back to,
Yeah.
as we choose what to do and not do, it kind of compounds.
And thanks for explaining that. I see your point in that. And I guess like what I would be concerned with as a council person is like if we're allotting, say, $150,000 for 2 police officers and we haven't filled the 3 positions that we have, chances are we aren't going to be able to fill those in the next year, maybe. I mean, I think the program with the cadets is pretty exciting. But like, what are other needs that we could be fulfilling with that money in the interim until we can actually sustain those other 2 police officers and get them onboarded and hired and going? Because otherwise, that's money that we're allotting to something that it's not being utilized to the best that we could utilize those dollars, is kind of what I'm thinking.
I would say the other side of that coin is if we find the candidates and we don't have the budget to support it, but we have the need and the candidates, but allocated it elsewhere, I think we have to budget for what we believe we need, and then try and find a way to deliver on that. And I think, the cadet program is an example of trying to rethink how we're doing it, and we're gonna continue to explore ways to get there. But I think and it's certainly up to you guys for the final decision, but I feel like my responsibility is to bring forward what I believe we need, and you guys have to help prioritize what the deliverables will be out of that.
And those discussions when we have the department meetings, like getting in down to the brass tacks have been pretty productive.
Every time we say no to something in a budget, it probably isn't gonna go away. And I don't think it has over the last 3 years, now 4 years. Like Matt just said, it has compounded.
Stacks up, yeah.
And again, us keeping it flat for 5, that's a great job, but we said no to a lot of things. It's gonna catch up, and it's here, so.
I would also say that as a growth mindset organization, I was just going through with staff today, we had a projected staffing model. Tammy Umdal actually sent it to me today, and she was asking me about it. And I got to go through it today, and what I recognized is because we are a growth mindset organization, we have retooled some positions in order to meet a need that we didn't even know when the staffing model was built. So an example would be, we had an admin sergeant projected for the department. Instead, we have used a lieutenant position in order to address those needs, and it allowed us to actually address more needs than what just the admin sergeant would be. Another example would be, we had a plant operator projected for this year. Instead, talking with Kevin, we recognized that industry standard, it was more helpful for us to have a utility lead. So someone that isn't just in the plant, but is also going out there. And I just got a letter yesterday, a note, talking about what a fantastic job that person is doing taking care of customers. Because we're having the discussions, in some cases, us being very intentional and deliberate have helped us to make smarter decisions rather than just going, yep, that's what we need now. The cadet program solution, if we hadn't had challenges with retention, we might not have looked twice at it. We might have looked like, oh, that's for much bigger cities than us. But when we see like, okay, well, we could do that and it would benefit us, and actually, since we actually have several of our current officers who are tied to Corcoran, we might even be able to homegrow our own cadet.
And I would also add that, and I think you know this, but just to clarify for everyone, that really this is just only locking us in, not even today, the 25th, is locking us into the absolute maximum ceiling of what we can pass. What we'll be diving into in all the subsequent work sessions is all those specifics and changes and potentially moving things and swapping things out or eliminating things, more realistically pushing them out. In those, as we set our final in December
11th.
December 11th. So.
There was a hockey game that day. We're not going to it because we're going to be here.
Wild or?
Yep, it's a wild game. I got the schedule
Maybe we
today,
can put
but
it
I just got
on the
tickets.
back on one of the TVs. We'll see how Kaprizov's playing by that time of year.
And anything else from council? So what is the guidance for September 11th?
I think I'm good.
I like that plan.
Okay.
Mhm.
Of
Thanks for clarification on that. I do want to open it up before we go out and just go down the line. Any comments or questions from staff for council regarding the budget?
No, and if you guys have specific questions, like Michelle, if you wanna spend some time, and I'm happy to go kind of line by line on what drives some of the changes in the budget, and, same thing with any of you, if you have questions about what's driving those, I'm happy to sit down and kind of go through the breakouts on those changes, as I'm sure my peers are too.
Okay,
And
thank you.
that's the other thing too, I wanted to say, I forgot, that I'm sure, I don't wanna speak for any department heads, but I'm sure if a council member wanted to sit down and talk about long-term things that they would like to see in the, you know,
Mhm.
in the years to come, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to meet with the council on a one-on-one basis and talk about that.
Yeah.
So, good deal. All right.
Or if
anything
you're
else?
doing something you don't want us to do, tell us. That's
That too.
Well, that's
Be a
all.
Packers fan.
Sorry.
So before I do want to open it up for Keisha and Vicki to see if you have any comments or clarifications.
We're also here to answer questions if anything does come up over the next month.
Okay, thank you.
Keisha, anything from you? Anything from you, Keisha?
Can you see her?
I can see her. But I'm
Thumbs
not
up,
sure
thumbs
she's hearing
down.
me.
A big one, thank you guys both for what you
Yeah.
do for us.
Can she hear us?
You're leaving or she's leaving?
Keisha's leaving.
Okay,
And Amanda will be joining the team.
gotcha.
Well, Amanda will be changing roles on the team.
We
She's
know
our first
Amanda,
team.
right?
We do.
I think we do. Thank you guys very much for helping. Been a big help.
Hard work of all of these folks, we just compile it.
Team effort.
Well, Mr. Mayor,
Thank you, everybody.
that's all staff has for you for this budget session, and we are 2 minutes from our end time.
Perfect. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.